Welcome to Horror Mania. I'm your host Terrelle. This is a brand new channel that I've created so that I can speak to my heart's content about the horror genre because it is my favorite genre of film. In today's video, I'm going to be reviewing the brand new film Presence from Steven Soderbergh. And I have a bit of a PSA before I get into this review, and this is quite a weird review. Now, let me explain why. I watched this film at a pre-release screening yesterday, Presence. It's being marketed as a horror film. But why I want to talk about this film specifically on this channel is to let people know that Presence is not a horror film. And at the very least, not the horror film that's being marketed to audiences. And I think this is a very significant thing. Expectations are very important when it comes to film. It's usually the reason why I don't like to watch trailers in general because they tend to spoil things. I rather go into a film and watch it blind and just experience it fresh without any preconceived images in my head of the film or any ideas or expectations. And with this one, I happened to see the trailer a few times before previous films I've watched recently. So I had an idea of what this film was, and of course, the initial concept of Presence, which is that it's a horror film. That's what it was sold as, a horror film that is told uniquely from the perspective of the entity within this house. So it's like a haunted house ghost story told from the perspective of the entity in the house, which I thought that's very unique. That's very different. And what I will say, having watched the film yesterday, is expectation management is required for Presence because this film is marketed as a horror film and it's not. And the reason why this is important is I think labeling Presence as a horror film is a disingenuous mistake on the part of the marketing team, which will do no favors for this film because it will set audiences up for disappointment. And it will do that by leading them in to watch the film with the wrong expectations because the film that the trailer sold to them is not the film that they'll actually watch if they go and see Presence. And the reason why I am reviewing it on this channel, this horror channel, despite me saying it's not a horror film, one, because I want to make people aware for the people that will watch this video that it isn't a horror film, to try and manage people's expectations so they potentially go in with the right idea of what this film is and potentially enjoy it or take it for what it is and not end up being so disappointed. Or so they can make the decision to not watch it because it's not what they wanted it to be or what they thought it would be based on the marketing. But also, it's still technically being classed as a horror film. So the fact that it's still technically being classed as one, even though I don't think it is one, still falls into that category. So I guess I could still review it on this channel. But what I would describe Presence as, instead of calling it a horror film, I describe it as a family drama with subtle elements of a supernatural thriller. Now, this film follows a family who move into this suburban house and they start to be convinced that there is a presence within the house among them. That's basically as much as the synopsis will tell you. The story does have a bit more depth to it than that, but I won't really go into too much detail with that because I want to kind of preserve that for your experience if you choose to watch the film. Now, this entire film is told from the refreshingly unique POV of the entity within the house as we observe the family's business. Now, the camera conveys that perspective brilliantly by maneuvering through the house in a kinetic and engaging way that always has the intended effect, which is to give you the feeling and the impression that we are unseen eyes prying on this family as they're living in this house and going through their business. There's a plethora of long takes throughout the film, and how the camera moves through the space during these sequences gave that feeling of this film as if it was somewhat like theatrical, as if I was watching a theatre performance to some degree, because the camera would kind of move throughout the space and move throughout the actors as they perform. But there was in most cases, there was quite a distance between the actors and the perspective that was given, in the sense that you rarely saw the actors directly in front of camera or like looking just off camera, or, because the perspective that's presented with this POV is that this is a presence that they cannot see, of course. So they're not actually kind of directed to the wherever this presence is located in a scene. They're not really directing their attention in that direction. So in the way that in a normal film you potentially would have an actor looking just off camera, you don't even necessarily get that because the characters aren't focused on the position where this this presence is taking place, this entity where they are. So it really gave a bit of separation between the actors and the camera in the sense where you did really get this feel that you were just spying on this family and they had like no idea that they were being watched, which gave it kind of this, it helped amplify that unique perspective that they were going for with this film. The cinematography and Steven Soderbergh's direction is the best thing that this film has to offer. It's an original concept that made me intrigued to see the film, and on that front, it delivers. Although I will say more could have been done to elevate the concept and the film as a whole. The story tackles themes of grief and loss within a dysfunctional family. Lucy Liu is the most recognizable member of the cast in this film, and she essentially plays the mother of the family called Rebecca. And she basically has an uneven level of pride and affection for her children. She clearly has more care and interest in her son, who is named Tyler, because he's making strides academically. He is also the reason that they actually moved into this suburban house so he could pursue his university, his school career, to make something of himself. But as a result of this, his daughter Chloe is emotionally neglected by her mother. And this is primarily Callina Liang's film because she is the centerpiece as she portrays Chloe's experience of navigating an emotionally turbulent time in her life, which serves as the foundation for this story. Chris Sullivan portrays her father, and he's the more understanding out of the two parents. And there's an actor named Wes Mulholland who portrays a character named Ryan, who befriends Chloe during her kind of grief period in this house, and he may have some ulterior motives for their friendship. As a whole, the performances were good in this film, and the characters felt like real people. So in that sense, it didn't feel like you were watching actors, and that is probably the biggest compliment I can give the cast in this film. Presence reminded me of Paranormal Activity in terms of being a slow-moving film with a supernatural element that takes place within a suburban home in which you're following a family and anticipating for something to go wrong. The thing about Paranormal Activity is some people find it boring, especially if they never experienced it in the cinema. I have fond memories of watching Paranormal Activity in the cinema when I was like 15 years old. It was a big deal. It's a film that I never really watch. I've never really revisited it more than maybe once or twice since because I think it is uniquely special for that cinema experience and that particular time when it came out, when it felt fresh and unique. That's like my generation's Blair Witch in a way. So I do hold Paranormal Activity like in high regard in my mind. But I do understand why some people, if they didn't watch it and get that, if they didn't get wrapped up in the hype of that film and its release and the experience in the cinema, why you could sit down and watch it now and probably think, oh, this film's a bit empty, a bit dull, and not that scary, I suppose. But the thing about Paranormal Activity is some people do find it boring. And I can imagine people will feel the same way about Presence, especially if they watch Presence under the impression and expectation that it is a horror film. Because, like I said, in my opinion, this is not a horror film. This film doesn't attempt to generate scares of any kind, nor does it have any atmosphere that you typically expect from a horror film of this type. Paranormal Activity's calling card is the final 10 minutes where you get the payoff to the build-up. The issue with Presence is I don't think there's much payoff, and in hindsight, there wasn't that much build-up either. It's just not that type of film. The story itself takes Presence's concept in a direction that I didn't expect, but despite that, it didn't prevent the film from feeling unfulfilling by the end. The supernatural aspects in this film could have been explored more than it was to make the events of the film resonate deeper than it did, but unfortunately they didn't really take it to that direction. And what that essentially leaves me feeling after watching this film was an underwhelming sense of, oh, is that it? That's how I felt when this film ended is, oh, okay, that was it, I suppose. And the person next to me, there were a couple of people next to me that I was talking to before the film started. We were having a chat. And then when it ended, we kind of just had a quick chat. These people are complete strangers to me. And the woman next to me, she didn't like it, less than I did. And the guy on the left of her, he did enjoy it quite a bit. So I'd say we'd have like the three different ranges of opinion on this film. She didn't like it. I'm kind of in the middle and think it's all right, it's good, for what it is, but it could have been better. And then the other guy thought he thoroughly enjoyed it, and took it for what it was more. Whereas me and the woman thought this was advertised as a horror film. This is not a horror film, and that kind of got in the way a little bit of our experience of the film and enjoying it. And that's why I think the marketing is doing a disservice by marketing Presence as a horror film. But overall, Presence deserves credit for the originality within the manner in which it was made. Those are the things I'll remember about it. But despite that, it squanders a fresh concept by leaving its potential unfulfilled. I don't think you necessarily need to see this in a cinema. But I do, and I've explained it many times, do think if you do choose to watch it, you need to know it's not a horror film. It's not going to have any jump scares. It's not even going to have like sustained moments of dread or any real, permeating atmosphere, or any type of scares of any kind. Is not that type of film. Go into Presence expecting a family drama that has supernatural elements within it, and you may end up being better suited to experience the film for what it is and to potentially enjoy it. I'd give Presence 3 stars out of 5. That is my review of Presence. Thank you for taking the time to watch this review. If you enjoyed this review, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any future videos and reviews that I do. My most recent review on the channel, my first video on the channel was for Nosferatu. Check out my review for that if you haven't already. Thank you, and I'll speak to you guys in the next review.